Education is widely recognized as one of the most powerful mechanisms for shaping individuals and transforming society. In Malaysia especially, education functions not only as a means of acquiring knowledge, but more importantly as a key driver of social mobility, a tool for reducing inequality and a foundation for national unity. However, in the context of rapid globalization, technological advancement, and increasing social diversity, the education system must continuously evolve to remain relevant and effective. In response to these challenges, the Ministry of Education Malaysia has implemented several major educational transformations over the past decades. These transformations are not only merely as a policy changes, but strategic reforms aimed at ensuring that the education system is inclusive, equitable, and capable of meeting both national and global demands as referred to Kurniawan 2025. Before delving deeper into the topic of educational transformation, it is crucial for us to fully understand what it is about. According to Balakrishnan 2010, educational transformation refers to structured and systemic reforms introduced by the Ministry of Education Malaysia to improve the accessibility, quality, equity, and relevance of education in Malaysia. These reforms, according to the Bernama News, are guided by the Malaysia Education Blueprint 2013 to 2025 and the upcoming 2026 to 2035 Blueprint, which was introduced and launched by Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim on January 20, 2026, which outlines long-term strategies to develop holistic, globally, and competitive individuals. Importantly, these transformations are designed not only to improve academic outcomes, but also to strengthen the role of education as a catalyst for social mobility and national development. Therefore, evaluating these transformations requires us to examine not only their implementation, but also their actual impact on the society. Next, there are two main elements that I will be emphasizing on, which are social mobility and Malaysia's education aspirations. So, what is social mobility? Well, according to Mandahu 2025, social mobility refers to the movement of individuals or groups between different socio-economic positions within a society, which is often influenced by factors such as the education, occupation, and income. And in the Malaysian context, education is considered as one of the most significant pathways for upward social mobility, which is to improve your life in simple terms. Well, however, the extent to which education can fulfill this role depends largely on how inclusive, how equitable, and how effective the system of education is. The second element is Malaysia's education aspirations, which consists of 5 key goals, which they are access, quality, equity, unity, and efficiency. These aspirations serve as benchmarks to evaluate the effectiveness of educational transformations. For instance, a successful transformation should not only increase access, but also ensure that all pupils, regardless of their backgrounds, are able to achieve meaningful learning outcomes and contribute to the society. Therefore, it is clear that these two elements are intricately linked to one another, as each of them has impacts on the other. Thus, in this presentation video, I will critically evaluate 3 major educational transformations in Malaysia. The first one is the zero reject policy under inclusive education. The second one, the digitalization of education. And the third one, standardization of primary school entry age. So each of these transformations will be analyzed in terms of its background, its impact on social mobility and national aspirations, as well as its limitations and areas for improvement. More importantly, I will examine how these transformations collectively shape the role of education in promoting a more equitable and cohesive society.
Seterusnya, Kementerian Pendidikan akan melaksanakan Zero Reject Policy secara berperingkat bermula 2019 bagi murid berkeperluan khas atau MBK. Dasar yang diperkemaskan dari segi pelaksanaan memastikan MBK menerima pendidikan selari dengan ketidakupayaan mereka sama ada ke sekolah-sekolah arus perdana melalui program pendidikan khas integrasi PPKI dan program inklusif atau ke sekolah pendidikan khas.
Menurut Timbalan Pengarah Bahagian Pendidikan Khas Datuk Dr. Yasmin Hussein, kedua-dua pilihan sekolah berkenaan disediakan dari peringkat prasekolah, rendah, menengah dan lepas menengah. Katanya tempoh percubaan 3 bulan juga akan diberi seperti yang terkandung dalam Kod Amalan Pendidikan Berkeperluan Khas yang bertujuan untuk menentukan penempatan MBK berdasarkan potensi masing-masing.
Jadi 3 bulan tempoh percubaan ni adalah kerana guru perlu menilai pelajar-pelajar ni sama ada mereka ni perlu berada di program integrasi ataupun boleh kita inklusifkan ataupun boleh kita beri intervensi di pusat-pusat pemulihan dalam komuniti. Selain daripada itu, 3 bulan tempoh percubaan, guru perlu melihat kepada kekuatan seseorang pelajar itu dan juga kelemahan-kelemahan ataupun kekurangan pelajar itu supaya guru boleh menyediakan rancangan pendidikan individu untuk menyediakan PDP pelajar.
Katanya 2019 merupakan tahun yang akan melihat perubahan besar terhadap kanak-kanak OKU yang mana semua jenis ketidakupayaan daripada pelbagai aras boleh ditempatkan di sekolah. Sehubungan itu, ibu bapa boleh disabitkan kesalahan di bawah Akta Pendidikan 1996, Akta 550, sekiranya gagal mendaftarkan persekolahan anak-anak OKU jika mencapai umur 6 tahun. Pada masa sama, semua sekolah kerajaan dan sekolah bantuan kerajaan akan dilengkapi kemudahan mesra OKU secara berperingkat bermula dengan sekolah pendidikan khas dan program pendidikan khas integrasi. Setakat ini hanya 170 sekolah yang telah lengkap 4 kemudahan mesra OKU terdiri daripada susur tangan, susur landai, tandas OKU dan parkir OKU.
So, the first transformation to be discussed is the zero reject policy, which was introduced in 2019, representing a significant shift towards inclusive education by ensuring that all children, including those with disabilities, are not denied access to schooling. This policy, according to Chin 2020, was rooted and largely driven by long-standing inequalities where many children with special educational needs were excluded due to limited facilities, lack of trained teachers, and societal stigma. Following its implementation, enrollment of students with special needs is seen to increase significantly, indicating improved access. However, this increase should not be interpreted as complete success, as success alone does not guarantee meaningful participation or learning outcomes among these pupils. Moreover, this transformation has the potential to enhance upward social mobility by providing marginalized groups with access to education, which is a key determinant of future employment and income opportunities. However, its effectiveness in promoting social mobility remains partially limited. Why? Well, without adequate support systems such as trained teachers and appropriate learning materials, pupils with special needs may not be fully benefit from the education provided. This suggests that while the policy improves success, it may not yet fully achieve its intended goal of transforming educational access into a long-term socioeconomic advancement. In terms of its impact on Malaysia's education aspirations, Ansimau et al. 2022 believes the zero reject policy strongly supports the aspirations of equity, which happens when every pupils are provided with similar specific resources, opportunities and support they need to succeed, while still acknowledging that their unique needs such as their race, income and disability requires personalized approaches rather than one size fits all. This is because this educational transformation ensures that no child is excluded from the education system, regardless of those differences. It also contributes to unity, which refers to a fostering of a collaborative, inclusive environment where diverse students and staffs are united by shared goals, mutual respect and common human values, as this policy promotes interaction, empathy and acceptance among pupils of different abilities. However, from a critical perspective, the aspiration of quality may not yet fully achieved if inclusive practices are not effectively implemented. This highlights a gap between policy intention and actual classroom practice. Hence, to enhance the effectiveness of this transformation, I would suggest that targeted interventions are required in which the Ministry of Education Malaysia should prioritize specialized teacher training in inclusive pedagogy, increase funding for support services, and also implement continuous monitoring systems to evaluate student outcomes. Such measures, in my opinion, are essential to ensure that inclusion goes beyond physical access and translates into something more meaningful in their educational experiences. Therefore, as a future teacher, I aim to move beyond the idea of inclusion as a policy requirement and instead embrace it as a professional responsibility. I hope to create a classroom environment where all pupils are not only present but actively engaged and supported in their learning journey despite their differences.
Meskipun penularan pandemik COVID-19 memberi impak besar kepada pelbagai sektor termasuk pendidikan, namun tenaga pengajar tidak mengambil kesempatan dalam tempoh mencabar ini. Sebaliknya, terus komite memastikan pelajar tidak ketinggalan dalam pembelajaran. Dengan kecanggihan teknologi kini, pembelajaran dalam talian menjadi solusi terbaik dalam memastikan sesi pembelajaran sentiasa berjalan walaupun pelajar dan guru tidak bersemuka. Menurut pelajar dari Sekolah Rendah Sungai Besi Indah Seri Kembangan, Muhammad Haziq Aiman, walaupun beliau sedikit sukar untuk mendapatkan pemahaman yang lebih lanjut daripada guru berhubung sesuatu subjek, namun pembelajaran dalam talian memberi peluang kepada dirinya untuk mengurus masa bagi menyemak sendiri sesuatu perkara yang beliau tidak fahami.
Cikgu akan bagi kerja sekolah melalui grup WhatsApp kelas. Cikgu akan bagi kerja sekolah melalui bentuk PDF, website ataupun kena buat dekat buku tulis, kena rujuk di buku teks. Yang senang tu sebab kita boleh buat kat mana je. Lepas tu kita boleh susun timing kita bila nak buat, kalau besok kena buat ataupun lusa kena buat, ataupun masa cuti boleh buat.
Selain dapat meneruskan silibus bagi setiap subjek tanpa tertangguh, Aiman turut mengakui pembelajaran dalam talian juga secara tidak langsung dapat meningkatkan lagi kemahirannya dalam penggunaan teknologi. Bapanya, Rahmat Firdaus, berkata selain dapat memantau sendiri sesi pembelajaran anaknya, beliau juga berpuas hati kerana teknologi yang dimilikinya dimanfaatkan oleh anak-anak untuk perkara berfaedah. Malah beliau turut bersetuju sekiranya teknik pembelajaran itu diteruskan walaupun selepas tempoh PKP.
Saya rasa kaedah pembelajaran melalui online ni harus diteruskan walaupun selepas tempoh PKP. Contohnya mungkin kaedah ni kita boleh teruskan semasa anak-anak cuti sekolah, macam tu. Jadi anak-anak dekat rumah dia akan sentiasa dipantau oleh guru-guru dan guru-guru boleh memberi kerja sekolah berterusan secara konsisten kepada anak-anak supaya mereka dapat meneruskan pembelajaran dengan lebih berkesan di rumah, walaupun di rumah.
Walaupun penangguhan sekolah-sekolah awam dalam tempoh PKP tidak memberi kesan kewangan kepada ibu bapa atau penjaga, namun nasib sebaliknya menimpa pasangan yang mempunyai anak-anak yang menuntut di sekolah swasta kerana mereka masih perlu membayar yuran secara bulanan. Sehubungan itu, sesi pembelajaran dalam talian secara konsisten amat dititik beratkan oleh pihak sekolah swasta supaya pembayaran yang dibuat dalam tempoh PKP ini tidak menjadi pelaburan yang sia-sia. Salah seorang pelajar sebuah tadika swasta, Be Smart Kinder Kids, Adrian Naufal Amirul, sempat berkongsi sesi pembelajaran yang ditetapkan oleh pihak tenaga pengajar di sekolahnya menggunakan aplikasi dalam talian. Ibunya, Siti Nadirah Abdullah, memberitahu bernama TV, memandangkan anaknya masih kecil, pembelajaran menerusi panggilan video oleh guru merupakan satu teknik pembelajaran yang sangat interaktif dan berkesan, menarik minat kanak-kanak untuk belajar di rumah.
Dia bagi worksheet dengan satu video that from PDF, and then kita boleh tengok lah. So nanti budak-budak akan tengok pada video tu, lepas tu dia akan buat worksheet selama 2 minggu. And then after that, diorang start balik buat online class macam ni, direct, fokus lah bagi budak lagi fokus ages, sebab dekat rumah dia orang tak tahu kan parents tu buka atau tak.
Selain menjadi aktiviti yang bermanfaat kepada kanak-kanak sewaktu berada di rumah, Nadira berkata pembelajaran dalam talian ini juga dapat membantu kanak-kanak supaya tidak berasa janggal apabila memulakan semula sesi persekolahan kelak walaupun sudah lama bercuti.
At least dia pergi sekolah tu dia tak takut lah kan. Dan setengah budak dah sebulan tak pergi sekolah, memang tak akan nak lah pergi sekolah kan. So aplikasi ni bagus lah sebab dapat interact kan antara teacher dengan kids tu makin dekat lagi walaupun dalam keadaan tak boleh bersama kan, berkumpul.
Bagi pengusaha tadika, tujuan utama mereka mengadakan pembelajaran secara online adalah bagi memastikan murid tidak ketinggalan.
What is our main objective? Kami tak nak murid ketinggalan dalam pelajaran walaupun masa MCO ni, PKP. Okay, they are on track with their syllabus. Just because PKP, we don't want the kids to lose. Because what? Be smart. Normally, we emphasize on reading skills. That is the main thing. If they know how to read, BM and English, it will be very easy for us to go on with the lesson with them.
Keputusan kerajaan untuk tidak membenarkan institusi pendidikan seperti sekolah, taska ataupun pusat asuhan untuk beroperasi merupakan langkah terbaik bagi melindungi kanak-kanak atau pelajar daripada wabak pandemik COVID-19. Namun, inilah masanya untuk pihak berkepentingan seperti tenaga pengajar dan ibu bapa memikirkan langkah terbaik bagi memastikan anak-anak mereka tidak ketinggalan dalam sesi pembelajaran. Mana tahu langkah yang diambil sekarang berguna untuk diamalkan dalam sistem pendidikan pada masa akan datang. Saya Syahra Batia untuk Bernama TV.
The second transformation that I am interested in highlighting is the digitalization of education that became particularly prominent during the COVID-19 pandemic that begins particularly in 2020 when all schools were required to shift rapidly to online learning. This educational transformation is the one that especially affects me. So, the transformation of the education in the digitalization aspect reflects a broader global trend towards integrating technology in education with the aim of enhancing flexibility, accessibility, and innovation in teaching and learning, while at the same time has served as a prominent method to mitigate the transmission of the disease. However, I would say that the sudden transition also exposed the underlying structural inequalities within the education system itself, particularly in terms of access to digital resources, as this policy is something very new and quite sudden to the citizens of Malaysia. And this statement is supported by Antam Belani and Motadi 2025. Additionally, in terms of its impacts on social mobility, I would like to highlight that digitalization has the potential to act as a powerful enabler of social mobility by expanding access to knowledge and learning opportunities beyond the physical classroom. This allows pupils to have access to learning anytime and anywhere, not just at school as they used to do, as cited by Halim et al. 2022. However, in the Malaysian context, its impact is highly uneven. This happens because, from my perspective, pupils from urban and higher income backgrounds are more likely to benefit from this, while those in rural or low income settings may face significant barriers. This uneven access or opportunities creates a paradox where digitalization, instead of reducing inequality, may inadvertently reinforce existing socioeconomic disparities. Therefore, I would say that its contribution to social mobility can be considered as conditional rather than universal. On the side of its relation to Malaysia's education aspirations, this transformation strongly supports the aspiration of quality, which means raising student outcomes to international standards, shifting from rote learning to critical thinking, and ensuring holistic development in terms of all intellectual, spiritual, emotional, and physical. This is because this transformation introduces innovative teaching methods and promotes independent learning for the pupils. Apart from that, it also enhances efficiency, the aspiration of maximizing pupils' outcomes such as better test scores and skills while making the best use of available financial and educational resources, because digital platforms streamline communication and resource distribution. Although the aspiration of equity remains a major challenge, as once again, unequal access to technology limits the effectiveness of digital education for certain groups. To address these challenges, Muslimin and Indrawati 2024 said that the government should implement targeted policies such as expanding rural internet infrastructure, providing subsidized digital devices, and offering continuous professional development for teachers in digital pedagogy. These measures are crucial to ensure that digitalization becomes an inclusive transformation rather than a divisive one. All in all, as a future teacher, I aim to be one of the teachers who master the use of technology and integrate it in a way that enhances the education rather than replaces meaningful human interaction, because I believe that technology should be used as a tool to support engagement, creativity and critical thinking.
Pencapaian cemerlang SPM 2025 membuktikan daya tahan tinggi calon biarpun mereka adalah kohort pertama yang tidak menduduki UPSR dan PT3.
Menteri Pendidikan Fadlina Siddiq berkata kejayaan itu mencerminkan keberkesanan intervensi berterusan KPM selain komitmen guru serta sokongan ibu bapa. Ditemui pada majlis pengumuman keputusan SPM di Sekolah Menengah Kebangsaan Tinggi Kajang Selangor, Fadlina berkata KPM akan memperkukuh intervensi bagi menangani isu ketidakhadiran selain memperkasa sistem sokongan kepada calon SPM.
Dengan keputusan ini telah membuktikan bahawa mereka adalah satu generasi ataupun kohort anak-anak yang resilient, mempunyai daya tahan yang cukup tinggi. Jadi saya sangat bangga dengan mereka sebenarnya kerana telah mengharungi pelbagai ujian termasuk COVID dan sebagainya.
Dalam pada itu, Ketua Pengarah Pendidikan Datuk Muhammad Azam Ahmad turut senada bahawa usaha intervensi KPM menjadi antara faktor yang mendorong pencapaian membanggakan.
Kita sentiasa merangka intervensi-intervensi di peringkat KPM memberikan, menjajarkan polisi-polisi bagaimana kita nak laksanakan pendidikan di bawah ini. Dan JPN dan PPD juga kita menyelaraskan semua polisi-polisi, intervensi-intervensi strategik. Jadi akhirnya inilah hasilnya. Sebab itu semua usaha ini saya mulakan dengan resilient tadi. Semua ini telah mengangkat potensi anak kita, menggilap potensi anak kita sehingga menjadi insan yang mempunyai daya tahan.
Beliau juga menzahirkan penghargaan kepada warga pendidik, khususnya guru seluruh negara, serta mengucapkan tahniah kepada semua calon SPM 2025.
Bagi sekolah integriti dan handle gini, calonnya seramai 99 orang. Analisis menunjukkan satu orang calon telah berjaya memperoleh semua A bersamaan dengan 1.01%. 24 orang calon lagi memperoleh kepujian.
Next, in recent years, Malaysia has introduced a major shift in its assessment system through the abolishment of two major public examinations, which are the Ujian Pencapaian Sekolah Rendah or UPSR in 2021 and Pentaksiran Tingkatan 3 or PT3 in 2022. This brings us to the third educational transformation that I would like to emphasize, which is the abolishment of UPSR and PT3 examination. Traditionally, these examinations played a significant role in determining pupils' academic progression, and these examinations were often seen as high-stakes assessment that shaped students' educational pathways. However, over time, concerns were raised regarding the overemphasis on examination-oriented learning, where students are more focused on rote memorization and achieving grades rather than to develop meaningful understanding and higher-order thinking skills. Therefore, the Ministry of Education Malaysia has decided to abolish these examinations as part of a broader effort to shift towards school-based assessment, or we call it as Pentaksiran Berasaskan Sekolah or PBS, and to shift towards a more holistic evaluation system. This transformation aligns with the goals of the Malaysia Education Blueprint, which emphasizes the development of well-rounded individuals rather than an exam-focused learners. From a theoretical perspective, this shift is strongly influenced by the concept of Assessment for Learning or AFL, where assessment is used continuously to support learning rather than merely to measure achievements of pupils. It also reflects constructivist learning theory, which emphasizes active learning, critical thinking, and student engagement rather than those rote memorization. Therefore, this transformation is not merely about removing examinations, but about redefining the purpose of assessment in education to support a deeper and more meaningful learning. So, this transformation has a complex impact on social mobility. On one hand, the abolishment of high-stakes examinations can reduce pressure and create a more equitable learning environment, especially for those pupils who may not perform well in these exam-based settings. By shifting towards continuous and classroom-based assessment or PBS, pupils are given more opportunities to demonstrate their abilities in diverse ways, which can support more inclusive pathways to academic success and potentially to enhance their social mobility. However, from a critical perspective, this transformation may also create new challenges. Without standardized national examinations, there may be inconsistencies in assessment practices across different schools, which can affect fairness and comparability of students' performance. Additionally, pupils from more advantaged backgrounds may still benefit better from better school resources and from those better teacher support, which could continue to influence their academic outcomes. This suggests that while the transformation aims to reduce inequality, its impact on social mobility remains dependent on the consistency and the quality of implementation. Discussing deeper into this educational transformation, I found that it strongly supports the aspiration of quality as it promotes higher order thinking skills, creativity, and holistic pupils' development rather than just rote memorization. It also contributes to efficiency as continuous assessment allows teachers to identify learning gaps early between those pupils, and it allows teachers to adjust their teaching strategies accordingly. Furthermore, it supports unity and equity by reducing excessive competition and exam pressure among those pupils, which creates a more supportive and inclusive learning environment. However, the aspiration of equity may still face challenges if there are disparities in how assessments are conducted across different schools. This highlights the importance of ensuring standardization and fairness within school-based assessment practices. To further strengthen this transformation, the Ministry of Education should provide clearer guidelines and standardized frameworks for school-based assessment to ensure consistency across different schools. In addition, continuous professional development for teachers is essential to equip them with the skills they need to design effective classroom assessments that truly reflect their pupils' abilities. I also think that there should be monitoring and moderation systems to ensure fairness and reliability in assessment practices. And these improvements are crucial to ensure that the shift away from examinations leads to meaningful improvements in learning rather than uncertainty or inconsistency. Overall, as a future teacher, I aspire to use assessment not just as a tool to evaluate my pupils, but also as a means to support their learning development. I want to create a classroom where pupils are encouraged to think critically, express their ideas, and learn without the fear of examinations. Well, I believe that education should focus on nurturing potential rather than simply measuring their performance. Well, before wrapping things up, From my collective examination, I realized that these three transformations reflect a broader shift towards a more inclusive, technologically advanced, and student-centered education system. However, their effectiveness is deeply interconnected. Issues such as inequality, access to resources, and differences in implementation can continue to influence all three transformations, which further highlights the need for a more integrated and holistic approach to educational reform. This suggests that while significant progress has been made, further improvements are necessary to ensure that our education system truly functions as a tool for social mobility and national development. In conclusion, the educational transformations implemented by the Ministry of Education Malaysia demonstrates a strong commitment towards achieving inclusivity, innovation, and unity. While each transformation has made meaningful contributions, their success ultimately depends on effective implementation and continuous development. To all teacher trainees, as future educators, we play a crucial role in bridging the gap between policy and practice. It is our responsibility to ensure that these transformations are translated into meaningful learning experiences that empower every pupil in our school to succeed. Therefore, NABILAH, I end my presentation here regarding educational transformation in Malaysia context. Thank you.